So I just posted this thing on Threads asking people to tell me what they think the most exciting phone was for them so far of 2023, since 2023 is almost over. And when I made this post, my answer was the Pixel Fold. So I started kind of talking about why I thought the Pixel Fold was the most exciting device of 2023. And that got me thinking and kind of made me realize I've had the Pixel Fold for close to half a year now, so it might be a good idea to sort of check in and do a long-term review, kind of at that half a year mark. I wish I could say 6 months in. It's not quite 6 months, so we'll say like half of a year, give or take. It's a bit of a fuzzier answer, so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about how the Pixel Fold is holding up now, almost 6 months on after release. So the first thing to talk about here is the hardware. How has that aspect of this device held up in, around about 6 months? Now, obviously, mine does have a tempered glass screen protector on. And with that tempered glass screen protector on, I think you can see here that it has held up just fine. I don't really have any significant scratches or anything weird going on there. If we look at the back hinge, let's clean this off as best we can because it is a bit of a fingerprint magnet. Not a whole lot to report there either. There are, of course, some little, micro scratches, if you want to call them that. Let's adjust this light just a little bit. Maybe you can see a bit better some of the little scratches that have appeared on the hinge, the spine of the device, but nothing too bad. On the camera visor, I would say that's the area where it's probably looking the worst. Again, let's try and clean that off. And it has accumulated quite a number of little scratches. And that's, fairly obviously because you set the thing down and that's what it's going to be resting on. And that's just going to, something that's going to accumulate based on that material. It's something that's just going to scratch. But if you look closely, the glass over the cameras is pretty much unscathed still. So that's a pretty good place to be. Really similar, really on the other edge of the device as well. It's holding up quite well, okay? Like the hardware is doing a good job. It's, been in my pocket a lot. I've used it a lot over those 6 months. It's the device I have daily driven primarily. The OnePlus Open did sneak in there and get, daily driven quite a bit as well. For the last maybe, month or so since the OnePlus Open came out, I have been switching back and forth, but my SIM is currently in the Fold again. And like I said, used it a lot. Hardware is holding up just fine. As a side note, my Dbrand skin has, developed this very nice natural patina that looks great as well. With regard to the inner display, it has also held up quite well. Yes, these screens are softer than normal glass, but as long as you don't go just, digging your nail into them or scraping your keys across them or something like that, they're going to hold up just fine. I do think I have a minor a couple of scratches right in this region. There's one at the tip of my finger, and I don't know if I can even show it to you because it's so light. I don't know. Maybe you could see it right there, but otherwise, it's held up just fine, and I'm not really particularly surprised by that. One thing that I have noticed is up here on the bezel. Notice how it almost looks like there's like a speckling thing going on. It looks like it's something you could almost like wipe off. I hope that's showing up. But it's not. It's just kind of what it looks like now, and I don't really know why that is or what to make of that. It doesn't really bother me, but it's something that's there, and if I look really closely, it's something that I do notice a little bit. Overall, hardware-wise, I think that the Pixel Fold has held up extraordinarily well. It feels like a tank, and it acts like a tank, and that's a good thing in a lot of ways. It does not open all the way flat all the time. You do have to give it a little bit more force, but you can see here, even after 6 months, I didn't, make any conscious effort to open it up any flatter, and that's pretty darn close. So that's not gotten worse. A lot of people were worried that it's like, oh, well, if it only opens up, partially, now what's it going to be like in 6 months? What's it going to be like in a year? Well, the answer is pretty much exactly the same. The crease is pretty much exactly the same as it was whenever I first got it. It's not really deteriorated in any significant way at all. So again, pretty solid on all those areas. So one thing that I did hear from a lot of people when I talked about in my videos prior that I almost always charged this thing with a wireless charging stand, a Pixel stand, was that the heat from that wireless charging is going to degrade my battery more quickly. I literally had people saying to me, yeah, you say your battery life's okay now, but check back with us in 6 months and it's going to be falling off a cliff. Well, guys, let me show you something really quickly. I now have 110 charge cycles. Almost all of them are with a wireless charger. And my battery life is rock solid. In fact, it's actually better than it was when the device first came out. With some of these later updates, it has actually improved. I get 5, 6, 7 hours of screen on time pretty much every single day. I make it from 6 a.m. all the way until I'm going to bed just fine. Now, I was doing some work earlier, so it was sitting on the Pixel stand in front of my desk, so I'm charged up with, 2 hours and 33 minutes use of my screen. But in general, if I don't want to charge it all day, I don't have to. The battery's going to get me through the day just fine with a lot of time spent on this inner screen. Battery life has not deteriorated. If anything, it's actually better than it was when I first got it. And that is going to kind of be the overall story of the Pixel Fold. It has improved since I first got it, which is something not a lot of phones manage to pull off. This one has. Not only have we gotten new features like the dual screen mode in the camera app that allows the subject to see what the photo is going to look like, we have gotten some really, really massive quality of life changes, like the ability to stretch apps across the screen. Now, you know how I feel about this? I'm kind of two minds. I would much rather have apps actually build a UI that is good for a tablet, like something like this with YouTube Music, where you have a tablet interface, and if you open up a track, you have, the space being made use of, right? Like, that's better than having an app like Threads that is simply going to stretch itself out across the screen. You can see when you go to an image, that's not necessarily the best possible experience, but we have the ability with this quick touch of an icon to go in and customize how that's going to sit. So you can kind of do what you need to do. If you think full screen is better, great. If you find that aspect ratio kind of breaks the app, you can put pillar boxing or letter boxing, whatever you want to call it. When it's vertical, it's pillar boxing. You can do that. If you think that makes the app look better, if you think that makes it look worse, then you can go to full screen and relaunch the app. That is a really nice quality of life thing because, let's be honest, many of these applications like Threads and Twitter and things like that, they're not going to build tablet interfaces, at least not anytime soon. Yes, Instagram and actually a lot of apps, I shouldn't say that this isn't going to happen because a lot of apps actually have rolled out tablet interfaces over the last year, but for the ones that aren't going to, this is a necessity, unfortunately. So one other place where this device has improved fairly dramatically for me is in regard to the brightness of the screens. When this device first came out, it was really bad about being out in direct sunlight, and yes, it would be fairly bright in those first few moments. It would hit its peak brightness, but after only maybe 45 seconds, it would dim. Maybe I thought it was getting too warm. We don't really know for sure why it would do this, but it would dim down. And all devices will hit their peak and will eventually drop down to sort of preserve themselves thermally, so forth and so on. This device would do it really, really quickly. And I had tons of comments from people saying this was just unusable for them. They'd say, I use my phone outside all the time and it dims too quickly. Well, I made a video not that long ago showing that seems to have been fixed. Putting this phone outside in direct sunlight next to another phone that should be much brighter. And indeed, not only did it hold its own in terms of raw brightness, it did not dim for a long, long time. And not only did I get tons of feedback from people in the moment, in that video's comments, saying, yes, I have noticed this as well. I recently got a pretty cool piece of feedback on Threads as well. Let's take a look at that. So forgive me, I'm not exactly sure how I would pronounce this name, Alodar. Maybe it's not meant to be pronounced. Maybe it's an acronym. I don't actually know for sure. But what this individual did was basically what I did. When the stable version of QPR1 was released, and both of us were on a later beta, we both opted out, which forced us to downgrade and wipe our devices. They said, hey, I just wiped my device. I'm going to check out the brightness now. And they said, I just know for sure yesterday before the reset, I was very happy with the Fold. Today after the reset, back to that dark screen. December update came in last night. Immediately on reboot, hours later, the Fold brightened up. And this, again, falls in line with my experience. Through some software updates, the brightness issues on this device have been resolved. A lot of the issues people had were either the brightness or the fact the apps could not stretch and span across the entire screen. Those are both resolved now. So what we have with the Pixel Fold is a device that has managed to sort of round off a lot of those rough edges, fix a lot of those early problems. The hardware is holding up just fine. The hinge feels exactly like it felt in those early days, even if it does feel a little mushy at the end. I do wish it had a nice snap, but that's not something that's changed. It's just that I've got my hands on other foldables that I think, ooh, that feels nice, and I wish that my Pixel Fold felt like that. The hardware has held up very well. The software was already good, and it is only getting better. They are literally resolving the biggest issues with this device. What more can I really say? If this is a device that you were into, you should be more into it now than you were when you first got it, because it is indeed aging like a fine wine. And to sort of come back around to the question of why do I think the Pixel Fold is the most exciting phone of the year, when there have been some very exciting phones this year, at least one other one in the OnePlus Open that I think is very, very exciting, because the OnePlus Open takes the foldable formula and I think almost perfects it. It takes it to a new level that Samsung and in a lot of ways Google as well have not reached. So why is the Pixel Fold the most exciting one for me? Well, it's simple. It's because it's Google and it's a Pixel. Google taking this kind of device seriously, producing a very premium version of one of these devices, adding features to it, even if it's slowly, right? So we have to keep this thing in mind when it comes to Google and the Pixel Fold specifically, but Google broadly, they have this track record of moving at sort of a glacial pace sometimes. Like, we will look at the Pixel Fold and we'll say, like I made a video about actually, we'll say the features aren't here. It's lagging behind in multitasking features compared to OnePlus, compared to Samsung. And that is absolutely true. And if you see these things and you say, because of that, I'm buying the OnePlus Open or the Z Fold 5, you're totally justified in doing that. But Google's not really worried about that because they're thinking super duper long term. They put out this device and, look, the brightness was weird and they fixed it and they didn't even bother to tell anyone, which is very frustrating, but it is sort of part and parcel with their strategy. They move slowly. They don't get too freaked out about little bumps in the road here or there. They're just going to keep working forward. They're just going to keep improving things. And the beautiful thing about that is, as they improve things here, right, like the ability to force apps to resize, that's now just part of Android for anyone to be able to use. That's just something that's there now. So the next company that makes a tablet or a foldable device, guess what? You've access to that now as well. The taskbar that they built, that now everyone has adopted, that was something that they eventually built. Samsung had something like that. They built their own version and rolled it out to everyone. Hopefully you see where I'm going with this. This is the rising tide that raises all boats in a sense. So again, Google taking this form factor seriously, rolling out updates, even if it's not as fast as we would hope, is a great thing for everyone who cares about foldable devices. And that is why it is the most exciting device of the year for me. But I would love to just sort of tag that on to the end of this video. What is the most exciting device for you so far this year? Let me know about that in the comments down below. But also, let me know how your Pixel Fold is holding up. Is it above or below expectations? Sound off in those comments, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.